Hi, before we start, it's very important for me to mention two people concerning the body language and micro emotions that will give us a bit about history and knowledge. The one is John Navaro. John Navaro is a Cuban-born American author and a public speaker, and he's a former FBI agent and a supervisor. And he specializes in non-verbal communication and body language, and he has numerous books, and he's one of the most important people in the world in body language. And we also have Paul Ackman, who will also tell us about the micro-emotions.
The limbic system has primacy over our brain. It can hijack neural activity instantly, and that's why when you smell smoke or somebody gets too close, or if you hear a loud noise, our limbic system kicks in. It's one of those beautiful things that has evolved with us. We are species that always communicating, but we also communicating with gestures. In fact, we have been primarily communicating with gestures for millions of years. I think about 2.5 million years ago, we were still in Africa. We were surrounded by predators at all times. Lions, tigers, wild dogs, all these things were after us. So we evolved to communicate silently, but effectively. We had to move through the jungle, we had to move between the trees, we had to move in all sorts of environments very quietly and still be able to communicate that which matters the most, which was what our mind needs, wants and desires, and what are my fears. If one of us saw a tiger or a lion, we evolved the capacity to freeze in place, so that by freezing, the predator would move on and not notice us. This has been with us for millions and millions of years. All of our early ancestors had to adapt to this one behavior, which was to freeze and to allow us to survive. Another day, those that run initiated the chase, trip, bite sequences. It was that movement that was so previous to our species, and so we have behaviors that are hardwired in us. It's part of our circuit, paleo circuit. These very innocent circuits that have allowed us. Deep within the brain is an area called the limbic system, and the limbic system is both exquisite and elegant in that it merely responds to the word. It doesn't have to think about the world. The limbic system is often also referred to as the mammalian brain, and it can be activated in a variety of ways. For instance, if the room suddenly gets too hot, your limbic system can be activated, or it gets too cold. If you smell smoke, the limbic system is immediately activated. It is on. While we sleep, it is on. While we think, we are in charge. When we are writing something, the limbic system is running in the background. It's like software. It's looking at, it's listening for, it's sensing. Are there things out there that could hurt me? I'll give you an example. If you take two gas stations and they're identical, but you dim the light of one versus the other, people will go to the better. If the gas station is without realizing why they're doing so, and they're doing it because light represents visual clarity, and you naturally feel safer. So even though they may charge you a little bit more, you still go there, because there is something about being able to see. Those of you who have children probably remember, rather the baby was startled, the baby would immediately bring up its hands and its fingers would be spread out. This is called the moral reflex. And this reflex we share with all primates, which allow us to immediately grab onto the air of those hairy individuals we were used to be, and allow us to hang on this, allow us to hang on. This was essential for survival. Remember, even before we were arthropod, depend our ability to be able to hang to her so that a very mobile and a very agile mother could move about while we assisted in hanging on. The baby ski reflex is very similar to it. It has to do with the feet. If you stroke the foot of a child at a very young age, before they have the two toes immediately spread out again so they can grab onto the hair and hang on. Or maybe you never notice it. For instance, when you lay a young baby down, as you put them on their back, their hand and arm goes in what's called the fencing posture, and that is as they lay down, their head will turn to one side and their arm will immediately come up as though they are fencing to protect us from rolling over. One of the other vestigial behavior is we have a reflex that orientates us. It's referred to as the orientation reflex, and it's very innocent. In fact, it's most likely pre-reptilian. It probably goes back to our amphibian past, and that is that in any time, if there is any movement, any chance in pattern, we orient to do so, and so our eyes turn to it, we react to it, and then it's coming at us, we will raise a hand to block it. Fishermen will tell you that fish will actually notice them. They'll notice the movement on the surface, so they move away. Fish are aware that they will be hunted down by birds, and so the orientation reflex is what usually saves them. But for humans, we have never lost this, because this is the key to our survival. We could not have survived as species if we could not respond to changes in imagery or changes in pattern. You know, oftentimes when you're sitting talking to somebody and somebody walks by and your attention turns to them, or the screen on a nearby television is on, then all of a sudden there's a change in color. Our change in pattern, the orientation reflex, makes us take notice, and a lot of guys use this excuse to look at football game when they should be paying attention to their friends. But in fact, it is anchored in our physiology. We have passed this on to react to anything that's different because it goes directly to our survival mode. Collateral behavior, because the limbic system is responsible for our survival, it can hijack neural activity instantly, and that's why you cannot run to the edge of the building and just look down. Your brain says slow and inch down your way to the edge of the building and then look down. One of those other things the limbic system does is orients us away from anything that can be perceived as hurtful or that we don't particularly care for. It says, I will not permit you to expose your ventral side to a person which you perceive as being nasty or dangerous or whatever. And so we have a lot of collateral behaviors that are associated with the starting situation. For instance, with primates, we know that when they are scared or they are hungry, they open up their mouth and they show the large canines. Well, we have lost our large canines, but in displaying our teeth, this is supposed to be to scare others. You'll see people react by tucking in their thumbs, and this is very much part of what we do in our species, which is when we are scared, we tend to bring our fingers together and tuck our thumbs in just the way that when somebody frightens us, you can see it sometimes at poker table. You'll have a poker players that have tucked their thumbs, busy hand, and you'll see the fingers come together and their thumbs disappear, indicating just how weak they are. We're not sure why we tend to tuck our thumbs in, It may be a part of something that we evolved as we moved throughout areas where there was a lot of vegetation, so that our possible thumbs don't catch on different sub-objects. And remember, I remember a friend of mine that served with me in Special Command Unit in Israel during Operation Lebanon. We were taking down enemy Hezbollah terrorists, and we were jumping from one house to the other over fences, and his thumb caught, and it was just completely ripped off. So it's not far-fetched that this is our behavior that we use, so that we don't have any appendage sort of loose that could get caught. And on the other hand, that we most often see is bringing a hand to the neck, brings a little area here. It's called the spiral notch. And if you look at the photographs that are out there of predators, this area of the body is primarily where they go to suffocate their prey. And so our pylori circuit, when we are struggling with something or we hear even something that is terrible, we instantly develop a set of procedures where we cover the neck cover, the mouth, and tuck the chin in effort to protect ourselves. Most of our behaviors, that's our universal, come from the limbic system. And so when I see a limbic response in New York, or somebody touching his neck, I will also see it in South Africa. There's no difference, because they are universal. They are also very variable, and so we can use it to assess others to determine what are they thinking, what are they feeling, or what might be they're feeling for. And that is very, 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 very important.
When explorers first began to meet different cultures around the world, they noticed something unusual about the expression of emotion. the face a foreign person made to show happiness, anger, or surprise was exactly the same face people made back in their home country. The scientists began to wonder, do all people across culture share the same universal facial expressions for emotion? Dr. Paul Ackman, a world-renowned psychologist, set out to answer this question. And from his decades of research, we have come to understand the true complexity of human emotions.
The big question in going to New Guinea was not, am I going to find out whether they're universal? I already knew they're universal. Is, can I get scientific evidence?
As a young scientist, Dr. Ackman traveled to the remote highlands of Papua New Guinea to study the Four Tribesmen. To prove his theory, he had to show that even these people, who had never met other cultures, shared the same universal facial expressions for emotion.
I collected stories, and the stories were just what I would have expected. When I showed them a sad face, it was the most common story was that the child had died. And I showed them an angry face. The most common story was they're fighting or about to fight.
When the Four Tribesmen looked at these pictures, they were actually examining the muscles of the face, searching for clues in the position of the eyes, mouth, or nose that would reveal to them how that person was feeling. A sad face showing slightly closed eyes, an angry face showing pinched eyebrows. Each emotion has its own unique signal or facial expression clue.
The signal is quite loud. They're not subtle signals. You don't have to teach anybody how to recognize those 7 emotions. We teach people how to recognize when someone's trying to conceal them, which is not too easy to do.
Dr. Ackman is also an expert on the science of lying. His research investigates the facial movements involved in hidden emotions and creates techniques for detecting when people are hiding the truth.
The facial expressions of emotion are involuntary, and they come from an area of the brain that you don't have voluntary control over. Some people are able to acquire the ability to at least partially inhibit. We found about 5% of a normal population can completely inhibit any expression. 95% can't. 95% there'll be some kind of leakage. You'll see it in some muscles moving, or you'll see what we call a microfacial expression. Very brief, about a 25th of a second, that most people will miss unless you've been trained to see them. But you can learn to see them.
When people lie, some part of the emotional signal, a small clue from a raised lip or quick look of the eyes, leaks out. This is because micro-expressions, like breathing, blinking, and yawning, are controlled by our involuntary nervous system. When we feel pain, ouch! The muscles of our face move automatically. And like a reflex, we cannot control this reaction. Discovering this fact was key to understanding how facial expressions and felt emotions are connected.
Almost with one exception, all of my discoveries that have had import were the result of accident. I can't take credit for the idea, but when an opportunity fell into my lap, I persevered like mad. And I aimed as high as I could see, and a little higher.